Hey guys, Inception here and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be doing a review for the new Team of the Week that recently came out. We're going to review the players and whether or not they would be good or bad to use. So let's get started. So here are the players that we've got here. So there's a lot of specific cards that would actually be quite decent to use. And then there's a lot of cards that are just cards that are kind of like spewed out and cards that people are probably not really going to use that often, but can still be usable in some sort of senses. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Lewandowski's card. So his 93 inform is an upgrade from his 92 version of his card. So the significant stat upgrade boosts are by 2s and 1s, so not really significant between a 92 and a 93. But if we look at his in-game stats, he has 80 acceleration with 85 sprint speed, which is quite nice with 80 agility and 82 balance. Now, for a striker, for me personally, I wouldn't necessarily like having a striker that's slow, but I feel like Lewandowski's in-form versions of his card would actually make him play a little bit better, but it's just the play style of not being able to run in behind someone's defense that would be a little bit lackluster in terms of having every single aspect of a player be really good. His positioning is 95 finishing, 92 shot power, which is really nice with 90 composure because he does have a 4-star weak foot. He doesn't have any skill moves, so again, very linear in terms of general movement with him. He's probably decent at taking long shots. We're going to go ahead and check to see if he has the finesse shot trait. He does have the finesse shot trait, so the long range finesse shots could actually end up being very good types of shots to take with him if you do end up using him. So if you're using Lewandowski, I would only assume that people are using him in a 4-1-2-1-2 or as a lone striker with in a 4-3-3 or something, right? Because his passing in general isn't that bad. 87 short passing with 68 long passing. So the long passing 68 isn't great, but it's also not terrible, right? It definitely could be better for sure, right? Long shots 86, so again, that finesse shot trait outside the box would be very nice. The chip shot trait would also be very good too, so if you guys haven't watched one of the videos where I explain how you can consistently hit the chip shot, he'll be very good at hitting those chip shots when he gets in behind the defense. If you hold LB or L1 2 seconds before you actually take the shot, they will hit it more consistently. So pretty decent card to have. Would I use it in my team? I don't know, it's very like situational, right? So this card looks really cool. If you were to get him as a red card, he would be fun to try out, but he wouldn't necessarily be a meta player to use in your team. So that's what I would say about Lewandowski's card. We have Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who actually looks like he has a decent card, bar the balance, which is very noticeable in game, by the ways. The balance part does make him somewhat slower on his card. Like the agility isn't high enough for it to be okay with him. So the dribbling wise, he will feel a tad bit slower. But the card does look like it would be a lot of fun to use. 96 acceleration and 98 sprint speed is quite nice in the sprint speed department. Physically, he's actually quite nice because he's a guy who's 6'1" with 79 strength, 81 stamina, 83 heading accuracy with 79 jumping. 79 jumping is quite nice to have for someone who's 6'1", so it's actually not bad at all for someone who's playing as a striker. So if you want to cross the ball into him, he would be able to put those into the back of the net at times. 92 finishing with 93 positioning is very, very nice. 84 shot power with 88 composure, also very nice. Again, the dribbling, you will notice that he doesn't dribble as quickly, but he's actually a really fun card to use because I've actually used the, I think it was the 88 version of his card for the draft recently. I think it was for my last draft where I was using him in a 4-3-1-2. And in a two-striker formation, he doesn't play that bad, right? The long passing is very noticeable that he's not very good at it. The long passing I notice more than anything is when you want to do the first time long pass, right? So if you want to lay it off to a striker and someone's making a run on the sides, on the other side of the field, you can't really do a really good wide pass with him. Players like Ronaldo, like Ronaldo's Team of the Year, for instance, are amazing at doing those first-time passes, which can definitely open up the space for you a little bit more. But Aubameyang's finishing is actually quite nice. If we look at his traits here, he does have the finesse shot trait, he does have the speed dribbler trait, so when you're running with him, you can cut easily with him, but when you're dribbling, when you're not running, he'll be a little bit slower. Tries to beat defensive lines, so if you tell your strikers to get in behind and press the back line. He would be very good at doing it too. Chip shot, so again, if you hold LB or L1 in front of the goal for 2 seconds before the goalie comes out, it would, it's like a second or two before the goalie comes out. He would be quite decent at doing it, right? So definitely looks like a decent card to use as well. Specialities is speedster, clinical finisher. I don't really know what clinical finisher really equates to. I don't know if the high finishing actually... The specialities are very weird for me, right? I wonder if poacher actually means that when you do a driven shot with another player, if he's just in a better position after a goalie tries to clear it out, but he just clears it into the middle of the play. So very hard to understand all of that. But the height is decent. The balance is 73 again, isn't that bad. You can give him a sniper card considering his acceleration and his sprint speed are already quite nice. If you can improve his balance by a little bit, the sniper by the website say that it's a +10, +5. I think it's more like a +4, +5 in the balance in terms of how he generally feels. But if you can actually do that to his card, he would play very nicely in your team. You'll have that pace, you'll have a little bit of that physical, and you'll have that attacking presence, being able to shoot with both of his feet. That finesse shot trait is very noticeable in game. He actually does take quality finesse shots from outside the box and inside the box. Ibrahimovic actually looks like a fun card to use. Now, again, his pace and his balance in general are very low. But because it's Ibrahimovic, his finishing is actually fantastic in game. 87 finishing with 94 composure. Now, this is where I wonder, right, where if the clinical finisher, complete forward, and poacher is what makes him very good inside the box in terms of finishing, right? I always wonder these things. Now, this Ibrahimovic card is very hard to link up with a team. Actually, he's not hard to link up with a team because if you get this Ibrahimovic card, you can get Alessandrini and give him full chemistry, because if you use Alessandrini in a team, you would just have to use a 4-3-2-1. Alessandrini is French, so it's not hard to link up with him in teams. So you can have Ibrahimovic on full chemistry and then switch up the sides on the other side as well. So you can make some pretty decent squads with Ibrahimovic, only if you put Alessandrini as your right forward, so you can get him on that chemistry, right? So he has 83 agility, which seems very insignificant considering the fact that his balance is 42, but his finishing is very, very nice. If you actually use this card as a cam card, he plays quite nicely there because he actually wins the ball in the air because he's a very strong presence in the air. His jumping is 70, but his height is also 6'4", so he's going to play that role of winning every physical battle for you very well. Now, running back with him, he'll be a little bit questionable with 72 stamina as your cam, but as a striker, if you're using like a 4-1-2-2 setup and you want to have fun with him and somebody else on the side with him, he would actually play quite nicely. 85 vision. I really wish I knew. There's certain stats that people wish they knew about, and vision is something that I wish I knew what it was. So now my prediction of what vision means is I wonder if that actually means the type of pass that your player does, right? So I wonder if your player has 82 vision, if they do a certain Y pass a certain way rather than another way, right? So you know how sometimes when your player does a Y pass, he actually passes it to the outside, but you wanted him to pass it on the inside? I wonder if that carries any influence on whether the player passes it in a certain way. Certain stats that are very noticeable of what goes hand in hand with each other. So acceleration, sprint speed, agility, and balance always go hand in hand with each other. You'll always notice that in the dribbling department. Sprint speed wise is not very good, right? But those 4 stats altogether will be very noticeable in the dribbling department. But again, he would be a fun card to use. It's Ibrahimovic at the end of the day, right? Everyone wants to have fun with Ibrahimovic. I wish they gave him 5-star skills because it would be even better to use his card, but it is what it is. His card, again, looks great. Physically, he's a beast. He's very slow, though, so you have to do very slow build-up play with him, but he looks like he would be a fun card to use. Cuadrado looks like the typical player that if it was in older FIFAs, he would be a little bit more usable. Now, reason being is because on the ball, he's actually very nice. He plays pretty decently. 3-star weak foot can present to be a problem. And the thing about the wingers, right, is that because the finishing is a certain way, EA needs to focus on giving these types of cards better finishing and better composure to make more cards usable, right? Because 74 finishing and 79 composure actually makes his shooting terrible, right? It's not even like, oh, it's a little bit bad. It's actually terrible, right? If you give the card 80 finishing at the very least and you give him 79 composure, you make the card a little bit more usable, right? So because it's a Cuadrado card, we don't know if he's going to get a team of the season anytime soon. You could just give him better finishing, so it's another usable card to use, because when you have 74 finishing with 79 composure while also having a 3-star weak foot with not really many physical capabilities in general, like his physical capabilities comes from his jumping, he's not very ideal to use in a team, right? But he would be a fun card to use, right? As a right mid, you got someone who will be able to attack forward, come back. Well, his attacking work rates are high and his defensive work rates are medium, but his passing stats are quite decent. They're not terrible. His shooting stats in general, now his shot power is very good and his long shots are very good. So the volleys being 75 and the penalties being 72 are very, very insignificant, right? Because if he has long shots, at least you're not super linear in the way that you have to play with him, because 88 long shots with 93 shot power makes them a little bit more usable to use. Now, some players will have decent finishing, but then they won't have long shots, and then they'll have that 3-star weak foot, and it'll make the card a little bit unusable, right? Because there's going to be so many specific moments where he's just not going to finish for you, and it's incredibly frustrating. So a topic that I want to bring up with people in my YouTube video that I usually bring to Twitter, but I'm not really doing it anymore with Twitter because of the way that people see certain things. Finishing with cards is incredibly important in FIFA, and it's a big reason why most of the cards are not usable in the game, right? So that is considered awful finishing stats. If I go search up Gabriel Jesus's card, his 83 version of his card has 85 finishing and 84 composure. This Gabriel Jesus card in front of goal will sometimes miss the easiest opportunities with you. So imagine someone who has 84 composure with 85 finishing missing a simple finesse shot at goal or a simple driven finesse shot just because it's not in the high 90s. So when you give these stats as someone like Cuadrado with 74 finishing and 79 composure, it makes his card incredibly unusable because there's going to be so many moments in game that he's going to fail those shots for you. But is it a fun card to use? On the ball, he'll be great. 5'10 height is not bad. If he was 5'7, he would just be completely awful to use in this game, in my opinion. Like it's everyone's different, right? But personally, with Cuadrado's card, I would use him in previous FIFAs, but not so much nowadays. Khedira also has an inform card, and Khedira's card, although he has 68 pace, it would be a quote-unquote fun card for people to use because defensively, he's actually pretty nice. High work rates with 6'2" height. Doesn't really have that many jumping. The reason why Khedira is okay to use in this game, I wouldn't recommend using him as a CDM or a center mid by that matter, but if you're a fan of Juve and stuff, then by all means do it. Acceleration, sprint speed, far too low. Agility and balance, far too low. But his shooting, his passing, and his defending and physical stats are quite nice. He doesn't often win the ball in the air. He will sometimes, though, because 69 jumping with 6'2" height isn't terrible. The 6'2" height definitely saves it a little bit, especially since he has a physical presence around that general area. He'll be a fun card to use, but he'll also be a card that'll be very frustrating to use because there's going to be a lot of moments for him where he's honestly going to bother you a lot. 86 composure with 74 finishing if you're using him as a CDM isn't bad because he's a CDM. 88 shot power with 84 long shots isn't bad. If we look at his traits, I don't know what leadership means, so it would be nice to know what that actually meant, and I don't know what tactician or strength means for the specialities either. So not really much to go by with Sami Khedira's card. He looks like, again, an interesting card to try out because there were a few people who actually enjoyed using the rare gold version of his card, but the inform version would definitely be an improvement on the rare gold, but not enough for me to really try him out. Dele Alli is actually an interesting card to use because I've used Dele Alli's rare gold card, and in all fairness, in the beginning of the game, it's not that bad to use. Now, if you look at the card, right, his 84 to his 86, excuse me, his 84 to his 86 actually has significant stat upgrades, right? It's in the +4s, +5, and +6s. So it actually makes his card significantly better. Now, if we look at his rare gold card, right? The card looks a little bit more unusable, but when you upgrade to his inform, giving him that 79 agility while being a cam makes him a little bit more usable because his dribbling stats are quite decent, but the agility and balance together will still make his dribbling a little bit slower, but on the ball, he'll have that physical strength because he is 6'2" with 74 strength and 88 aggression. So he'll be quite nice physically in game. When I use his rare gold card, I've always thought that if you give this card a hunter, right, where you really improve his finishing and you really improve his pace, then he would be like a quote-unquote fun card to use, but not necessarily meta, right? So I would actually try this card if I were you guys, because 71 interceptions isn't terrible. Like, if you're using him as a center mid, he won't play that role terribly for you, but he won't really play it to its full potential. Reason why he wouldn't be a bad center mid, again, is because of the physical presence, the height, and the ability to actually shoot the ball into the back of the net, because 90 finishing with 92 composure, with 82 shot power, 84 long shots is actually quite nice to have, right? Now, certain stats with him, again, are going to be very noticeable. He also does have pretty nice passing stats, so as a center mid, if you're playing him on the right center mid role, you know, you can do those outside the foot, not the outside the foot, but those outside passes to curve the ball into a better position, right? So he'll be decent at doing those as well. Not necessarily amazing, but again, very decent at doing those. So yeah, interesting card to use if you guys have the time to try him out. Perisic's card is a card that is 100% worth trying out. And the reason being is because you always sleep on this card because, again, with me, it's the balance being 71. But every time I've used Perisic in, like, say, a draft or something, he's actually quite fun to use because his acceleration may be low, which is more important than the sprint speed, in my opinion, because it's all about dribbling into the open space. His sprint speed being 91 actually is noticeable in game, but his acceleration, his initial speed up to run towards the ball is noticeably slower, right? His 85 finishing with his 90 shot power with 85 composure makes him an incredibly usable card. 87 long shot, and I'm pretty sure he has speed dribbler, which is very good to have when you're running with him again. So you'll be able to hold our trigger and just cut in between the spaces with him. Now, it's unfortunate that he doesn't have the finesse shot trait. That was actually the trait that I was looking to see if he had. But crosser, I don't know what crosser really does. I don't know if it makes his crossing very good. Like, I actually, again, these are the types of traits that I wonder what they specifically do, because when someone has a crosser trait, does that mean that if I want to aim for the far post, they do it better? Does that mean that if they're facing in awkward angles, they just hit those crosses better? I've always wondered about those specific traits with cards, because you actually don't see these traits in game for FIFA, but they actually make a huge significant difference as to whether a card will play very good or very bad. Some cards will have very similar stats to each other, but the traits is what separates them from being a good player or a bad player. If you look at this card and you're using him as a left mid, if you look at his work rates, high attacking, medium defensive, not bad to have as a left mid. He will present to be a physical presence for you on the left mid side. I would actually try him out in a team. Again, if you have all the coins, I would end up trying him out. Passing's good, shooting's good, dribbling is good, and his pace is decent, right? The only downfall with him is a 71 balance, but it's a card definitely worth trying out in game to see whether or not he would play well. I actually think that this card would be a little bit slept on, but I don't know how consistent he would be in the finishing, because I know that he has 85 finishing with 85 composure, which makes him very usable, but not having the finisher trait, I don't know if that makes his finishing better or worse. And this is the thing that I was talking about in the previous video, right? So because this card has 85 finishing and 90 shot power with 85 composure, because he doesn't have the trait, does that make his finishing significantly worse? I don't actually know how that works, right? Because I don't remember what the traits were we saw earlier in the video, whether it was a complete forward or complete finisher or whatever it is. I wonder if those stats really carry that much influence on whether or not the cards play significantly better or significantly worse. Some cards in here are very irrelevant to whether or not you should use them. These are the types of cards that would be used basically for SBCs, because a lot of them would never really be used in general. Consegli would be an interesting card to try out, but I always tell people that with these types of people in your team, unless you're making a fun squad where you have Sassuolo as one of your players, like for instance, I think that Sassuolo has one center back that has an informed card. So if you're a fan of the team, then it makes sense to put him in the squad. But necessarily, you can get a rare gold Donnarumma, and it'll perform way better than this Consegli card. But most of the times with the goalkeepers, I always tell this to people, it's all about having that leg save trait, man. With goalies, it's very weird to upgrade them because, dude, I had this Schmeichel card, which I'll actually show you guys right now. So I had this 86 version of Schmeichel's card, and the base card stats actually look like they're quite decent, but in general, he doesn't play well in game at all. He concedes the easiest types of goals because he doesn't have that leg save trait. Now, in all honesty, I kind of wish it was like that without the leg save trait. I wish the goalies, it wasn't an actual trait. I wish it was a thing that goalies randomly did and randomly didn't do. Like, Schmeichel sometimes doesn't do it. The leg save trait just makes it so that they consistently do it rather than like, oh, from time to time I'll decide to do it, right? Because players like Hugo Lloris will sometimes do it, sometimes Courtois will do it, sometimes I'll be using like Asenio, and Asenio will do it, but they won't do it consistently. And it's the consistent part that makes players like De Gea a step above everybody else in this game. De Gea, even his rare golds, because his team of the year is very awkward, his rare gold is probably the best goalie in the game. With icon goalies, with informs, whatever card they bring out, that leg save trait is just too good to not have in a team. David De Gea makes really stupid saves, in my opinion. They're incredibly dumb, but like, obviously he's a good goalie in real life, and this is where the people bring in this IRL comparison. David De Gea's card is only good because of that leg save trait, because people will say, oh, but De Gea is good in real life. Again, I need to really rephrase this all the time. It's only good because he has that leg save trait. Neuer is not as good as Begovic or even Farman in the game because he doesn't have that trait. He's a decent goalie, but he's not as good as those goalies because of that trait. And I always have to like emphasize that trait because it causes this huge influence. Debussy, again, would be a card to use in your team if you're, you know, just having fun with like a team that's from Saint Etienne, or a team that's from Saint Etienne, because I think Perrin's from that team as well. So if you're a fan of that squad, you use a team like Saint Etienne, you can actually use this card as a center back if you're switching in game, because defensive stats wise he's pretty decent. You've got a card who has good acceleration, sprint speed with agility and balance. As a center back, he'll actually play quite nicely. Now the problem is that he's 5'9", but his jumping is 89 and his strength is at 78, so it wouldn't be terrible. Now this card, looking into it a little bit more, would actually be a pretty decent fullback to use. But again, the biggest thing that's really lacking with this card is definitely the acceleration and sprint speed, because here's the thing that you'll see with the cards, but you know it doesn't make much of a difference. He does not have 93 acceleration and 84 sprint speed. You will never feel that, because that acceleration will play a huge factor in terms of whether or not he will play to that full potential. You will not notice 93 acceleration on his card. That's why I wish EA were more transparent with us when it came to the chemistry styles, because it would be nice to know the actual specifics to it. Because you're telling me that he has perfect defensive stats and his acceleration and sprint speed is like this, and there wouldn't be a point of getting his team of the season if he were to get one, because it would play similar. So I just don't think it's upgraded by that much. CO is a card I actually used in the beginning of the year as a cheap rare golds card. He has decent finishing stats. His on the ball, he's not terrible. 87 agility and 79 balance is quite nice for 5'10", right? So I did use this card in the beginning of the year as one of my cheap beasts. It was actually this card right here, and the significant improvement from this card to this card is in the +7s, 8s, and 6s, right? So there's a lot of improvement with this card. So I would try it out if you guys are having fun with it, because for me, he was like a cheap beast to use. in the beginning of the year, and it was enjoyable to use his card. This guy is actually performing really well in real life. Uth. Luis Alberto, he has 80 pace, 84 shooting, 90 passing, 88 dribbling. So if you don't care about the physical and the defensive stats, he'll be okay. Adon, I don't know if Adon actually has... I don't know if he actually has a leg save trait. I could be wrong in saying that he does, but if he doesn't, again, not really worth using. Luis Hernandez, as a generic center back to use that's Spanish and from Malaga, you wouldn't really be angry at getting a card like this, because defensive stats wise, he's actually quite decent. On the ball, he's pretty good too, and off the ball with the 74 acceleration, 76 sprint speed, 75 agility with 74 balance. And then the other real card that's even worth looking into in this team is Cabela. Cabela, as you guys know, was a meme for my team like 2 or 3 years ago. I absolutely hated this card, but for the fun factor, again, because he's from Saint Etienne, and this is the thing that I bring up, right? If you want to rock a team that has Cabela, Perrin, and Debuchy in the same squad, you can do that and have fun with the squad. Is he missing specific things with his card? Absolutely. But 4-star, 4-star with decent acceleration, sprint speed with agility and balance, while being 5'7". Big problem with the 5'7", but his passing's quite nice. Definitely worth trying out, but not necessarily for meta. So if you want to give this card a shot, 11k isn't too bad to have fun with, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So that is going to conclude the video for today, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you guys did, please drop a thumbs up on it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.